Elon tweeted this out. Nick, you can put this because I gave you the image, but it's a meme of Neil Young where it says, if you won't censor the guy I don't like, I won't let you listen to Keep on Rocking in a Free World.
Paradoxical, yeah.
And it's just so true, which is like, on the one hand, you are a standard bearer. Now, maybe what we should really do is talk about what has happened to this boomer generation over the last 50 years where they were, sex, drugs, rock and roll, no war in Vietnam, let's fight for our rights, let's fight for equality.
Then punk rock. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about just those folks back then who are now 50 years later, sitting on $70 trillion of wealth and who are basically like, you can't say this, you can't say that, don't do this, don't do that.
Wear masks, don't leave your house.
Fauci is right.
They're scared because they're old.
Wear masks, or you get canceled.
Pangolin. Yeah. That generation, I think we all have some soul searching to do about what happened to that generation.
I think they're scared because they're old and they feel like they're going to die from COVID.
Is it that generation, or is it the fact that every generation rebels against the prior and ultimately becomes conservative? And that's just how life goes.
I don't think they become conservative. I think they become authoritarian. I think that what happened is they're now in power. The boomers are in power. They've been making the decisions for the last 20 years. I think there is enormous popular discontent with the way the country's been run over the last 2 decades, the futile, pointless wars in the Middle East, the debt, the economy, the unfairness, it goes on and on. And especially with COVID. I mean, this COVID policy over the last 2 years has been a fiasco. And the point of this censorship of misinformation is to suppress the debate. I mean, what ultimately is the point take, for example, COVID, of saying that people cannot take a point of view? It is to stifle the debate. That's to prevent an honest debate on these issues. And the people who have an interest in doing that are the people who are in charge and are failing. And if you gave people the information, they would be voted out of office.
If you look, when I asked, what are the specific claims that either Joe Rogan or his guests made that people are objecting to, a lot of the people who were objecting and wanted him censored really didn't know. And one of them was, he said early on, I don't know for a young person who's in shape if I would advise them to take the vaccine. I know a lot of people who have that position, which is like, if you're young, and I think actually Friedberg, you might have said mRNA early on in this podcast is a very new technology. And I could see people wanting to wait and see. Did you not say that? I don't want to get you canceled here, but I think we did have that discussion.
How can we not have that conversation?
That's a valid conversation. mRNA is a new technology, right, Friedberg? You should think about it and we should be cautious.
Don't draw me into your cancel debate here.
That's why
Jacob.
I said we. I just changed it to we were talking about that. Don't you remember that discussion we had? Like when I asked you, I think, mRNA, what do you think of this versus the regular one, the J&J?
I think generally we've seen science being used as a term to discredit what I think would arguably and typically be scientific principles, which is inquiry, challenging hypotheses, and having, vigorous debate to resolve to some sort of objective truth. Otherwise, you're having some sort of subjective belief. And more often than not, we've seen politicians and others grab onto the term science and saying, this is science, it says this. When in fact, the process of science is inquiry, and it is to challenge, again, a hypothesis and what might be kind of a thesis. So yeah, I think generally this has been a pretty scary time to watch, because it's almost like gaslit lighting. It's like, hey, you're using the term science to discredit the notion of science. It's been pretty brutal. I sent you guys this cartoon link, by the way. It's so funny.
Oh, I just got it. Old left versus the modern left. It's a Volkswagen bus with a bunch of hippy dippy flowers, and it says free speech, free love, 1971. No CIA, screw the establishment, resist authority. And then it shows like a modern SUV with 2021. It says masks up, I heart the CDC, obey the establishment, no free speech. Do what you're told, obey, basically. You have another poll you want to share, Sacks?
Well, yeah, this is a really interesting one. It says a majority of voters, 55%, say COVID should be treated as an endemic disease, while a majority of Democrats say it should be continue to be treated as an emergency. And then there was a similar poll, the Monmouth poll just came out, where 89% of Republicans, 71% of independents say that it's time we accept COVID is here to stay and we need to get on with our lives. Only 47% of Democrats. So the reality is that the rest of the country, I think, has moved on. It's ready to move on. The split is not between Democrats and Republicans anymore. It's within the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is now divided on this question of whether we should move on as a country past COVID. Half of the Democratic Party still believes that COVID should be treated as this emergency.
Do you think that it's cut by age? Do you think there's a bias by age?
For sure. I think, yes, absolutely.
Old people are more scared, yeah.
But I think the media and the party, they've programmed their soldiers to be, to treat COVID as an emergency, and they can't deprogram them. And this is why I think we're seeing Tucker is now the biggest demographic among young Democrats.
That's insane to me. It's insane. That idea is insane.
This does not bode well on top of everything else that's happening in the country. This does not bode well for the Democrats in November. And then you had this crazy thing at the Magic Johnson party at that football
that was
game.
The best.
I held my breath. I took a picture of Magic Johnson. I held my breath so I wouldn't get the virus.
With Garcetti and Newsom. Newsom claimed
it's the new I didn't inhale.
Yeah, exactly. And then Newsom says that he was only photographed at the exact moment where he took off his mask for 2 seconds. You know
what? If you go to the ski slopes, there is nobody with a mask on, and nobody's enforcing it, and no restaurants. And this is in democratic country. Everybody has moved on at this point. Everybody's willing to. But
why haven't they? Why haven't
the media
Newsom and
the politicians? Because they're virtue signaling, and they want to keep power.
But to who?
I don't know. You tell me.
That's the point. Well,
I think they're dumb. They should take the position that we reopen.
They should just take the reopen.
But wouldn't taking the reopening position get you more voters at this point? People are tired of this. They want to move on. Doesn't make any sense. They're making a bad political decision.
I think they're beholden to their base. That's the point. I think the whole country has moved on. Even most Democrats have moved on, but the Democratic base has not moved on, and that is why Newsom and Garcetti have to pay lip service to this.
Well, I mean, and these guys have been telling everybody, got to wear a mask, and they're not wearing masks. And let's face it, they weren't wearing masks at the French Laundry. They have never worn masks. They've been throwing their own parties with no masks. They're a bunch of hypocrites.